Welcome back, my little nightmares, with me, Queen Nightmare, and I'm just going to say this before I begin because this is going to be a really long video due to these chapters being long. I just want to say this really quick. If you guys want me to delete the old videos so it's, not that out, so you're more comfortable with this video, please let me know. And if I ever offend you, please let me know. I just heard a lot of YouTubers coming out with apologies that some of them don't even look like they're apologizing, and they think that they're in the right. So I just want to tell you guys right now, I hope you tell me when you feel offended a little bit, because I say stuff without thinking, because I'm very, very bold. I just want to say that. Let's just keep going. Blaze likes to tie them up, which you will not hear any of what's going to happen. Have you caught him looking at your thighs yet? Pansy asked her from over the top of the till as she cashed up for the day. Hermione gave her a suspicious look, automatically not liking the direction that their conversation was heading in. Only once or twice, she admitted cautiously, wiping the stimulation gel shelf down with a cloth and polish. Barely noticed, to be honest. Pansy thought out loud. Hermione could tell that she really wanted to tell her something, but Hermione would have to fully indulge her to find out what it was. Interesting. Hermione rolled her eyes. Go on, spit it out. I know you're incapable of holding your own piss. I can say it now. Sorry. I was is it still too early to say it? A lot of people say piss is a bad word, so there you go. Pansy chuckled. Oh, it's nothing, she answered coyly. It's just something he likes to do in the moment, when he's thinking about whether or not he could fit in between your legs. Oh, gosh. Pansy, where's this going? Hermione turned to her friend with wide eyes. Excuse me? He was looking at your thighs to decide whether or not he can fit in between them. Pansy repeated with a smirk. He wants to make sure you'll be able to take him. All of him. Hermione suppressed an involuntary shudder and polished the shelves vigorously, trying to expel the images of Draco Malfoy sizing up her thighs in order to spread them and lay his torso in between, forcing her thighs wide. I think he likes the feeling, Pansy continued, which, to Hermione's dismay, he likes the idea that you're so tight that he can't move while inside of you. Jeez, Pansy. I feel like I'm a disappointed mother when I'm reading this. Just after reading it already, it's just disappointment. That's why he keeps looking at your thighs. You're petite, and he knows how good it will feel for him and you. I think it's all a myth, Hermione told her, matter-of-factly, trying to shift the conversation. I've not felt anything, and I think you're making it up. There was a small smile on her face as she baited the other witch. Oh, you'll wish I was making it up, Granger, she answered seriously. Hermione gulped. He's not let you feel it on purpose. Pansy bit her lip mischievously. Wouldn't want to scare you off by pulling you up against it straight away. I bet he was very particular about what part of his thigh you had to press up against. Hermione let out a breath and glared at Pansy. Stop giving me your facts, Pansy, she told the witch with a sigh. Even if that was what he was doing, he's not made any sort of move to even touch me properly. It's never going to happen. Pansy raised an eyebrow at her dubiously. From her place at the till. Oh, please, and last Friday night was nothing, was it? He touched you, didn't he? Hermione's heart fluttered at the memory. Hardly. It was a grasp of my hip, nothing more. Pansy huffed. What have I told you? She asked impatiently, rolling up a stack of till receipts. Draco doesn't touch without permission. The fact that he even touched you like that without asking says a lot. He's lost his self-control. Hermione rolled her eyes. And don't even get me started on the running commentary in your ear. Hermione blushed slightly at the memory. The things he said to her, they had affected her a lot since last Friday, constantly running the words over in her mind. She was already anticipating being in his house again this coming Friday. He had her on a knife's edge at the minute. And she knew that he wanted to keep her that way. Draco loves dirty talk, but he keeps it for inside the bedroom. He's not an exhibitionist. Pansy continued casually. He wanted to test your reaction to him. Wanted to see what you'd do. Oh, he's got such a bad craving for you. He never does this. Doesn't do what? Hermione asked curiously, having absolutely no idea where Pansy was going with this. She never had a clue where Pansy was going with most things, if she was honest. Plant seeds, Granger. Pansy told her excitedly. Usually if Draco likes you, then you just know, and then he waits because he knows you'll go to him. Pansy's eyes darkened with hungry emotion. Oh, gosh. Girl, why don't you do him? You're so into him, and you're so, wanting to do him. Why don't you do it? Why don't you date him? But he's not doing that with you. He's cautious. Like he's trying to edge the reaction out of you. He needs to make sure you're within his reach. Hermione looked at Pansy. My reaction? She asked. I was a puddle of hot mess on the floor. Just from him standing behind me. Never mind, he knew. Pansy told her gleefully. He must have sensed your body language, or he wouldn't have bothered moving forward with you. Hermione snorted. Forward? We've not moved anywhere. We're in exactly the same place that we've been for months, Pansy. The black-haired witch shook her head. You have no idea, Granger. No. Hermione honestly had no idea. She literally does have no idea because I literally read ahead and she has no idea. No, Hermione honestly had no idea. The man was so complex and dark, it had her craving him all the more. If you hear that, that's my refrigerator. I don't know if you've ever heard my refrigerator in the background before, but it's a piece of shit from time to time because it gets clogged up with ice constantly. And then my mom has to put on the defroster and it goes beep, beep for 15 minutes. The beeping sound. I literally wanted to kill the refrigerator. I think his name is Rufus. I forgot what his name is. We nicknamed him something. My mom nicknamed her Siri Pablo because she got pissed at it, because she didn't want him to listen on our conversations. I'm like, Mom, it's always listening to you, even if you turn it off. So, yeah. It made her crave him all the more, especially the look in his eyes as she left on Friday night. It felt like a promise of things to come. Yes, honey. To talk to you like that in a room full of people, knowing that someone might see or hear. Pansy sucked in a breath. Wow, he's definitely thought about effing you a lot. Hermione's jaw fell open. He got low into your ear, didn't he? she asked gleefully. He says all the right things to get your knickers wet. Jeez. But he'll be so much worse than that when he gets you into the bedroom. She smiled. The things he'll say will have you finishing without him even needing to touch you. Hermione bit her lip, looking away from her friend, trying to concentrate on her cleaning. Did you look at him? Pansy asked her curiously. While he was stood behind you, next to your ear. Did you look at him? Pansy nodded. Once or twice, mostly while he was watching Theo and Luna. Hermione's eyes widened deliciously. Oh, shit. Granger, you're fucked. Well, what she was secretly hoping for, but why? She asked curiously, not being able to help herself. Draco likes to know that you're looking, even when you shouldn't. Pansy teased. Like last Friday, for example. Pansy continued. You were watching something incredibly erotic, and yet you couldn't help but cast a glance in his direction. He would have felt it. Pansy's eyes widened deviously. Dang, Pansy's like me, but like 10 times worse. With the sexual stuff. I mean, I tease my friend, but I don't do this. Jeez, Then again, I haven't had sex with any of her exes. You know what I mean? Pansy's smile widened deviously. He knew what the words he was saying to you were affecting you. He was enjoying turning you on, making you want him, seeing nothing but him. Hermione let out a breath. He's almost got you where he wants you, Pansy told her. Almost? Hermione asked, feeling her heart rate increase at the thought. Oh, Granger. Pansy's eyes shone devilishly. He's nowhere near done with you yet. Salutation, ladies and gents. Theo's voice boomed in the room as he made his presence known from the fireplace flue in Draco's flats. Yeah, there was a time skip without telling. Yeah. Now where's that big blonde birthday having bastard? He said, rubbing his hands together, looking around the room. I got him a gift. Big wet smooch with his name on it. Touch me and I'll chop your nuts off with a blunt knife, came Draco's voice from the living room door as he scowled and walked away into the kitchen. Draco had canceled the pub that evening, opting instead to mope around on his own in regards to his impending birthday. Hermione wasn't sure why he hated his birthday so much, but it must have been something unsettling to cause him to want to spend it alone every year. But Pansy will not be waylaid, and instead of everyone meeting at the pub, she decided to cancel the pub frivolities, and opted instead to tell everyone to meet at Draco's instead, which had left him highly disgruntled. Well done, Theodore, Blaise sighed. Took us bloody ages to get him out of one of his little sulks. Then you appear and it takes you less than 20 seconds to make him go into another one. What can I say? He asked, raising his arms and shoulders. I have a gift. Theo took his coat off and settled it into the back of the armchair. What's up with his lordship, anyway? What's got his knickers in a knot? He doesn't do birthdays, does he? Pansy quoted in the deep voice as he mimicked Draco. You know what he's like? Highly doubtful he wanted us any of us here tonight to help him celebrate. She cast an eye over to Hermione. Well, some of us are more welcome than others, I think, anyway. Hermione put her head down, and drank her wine. Well, tough titties, Theo answered, grabbing a tumbler full of fire whiskey and sitting in the armchair. Tough titties. I think I've said that a couple times, but not titties. I said tough tit. Like, yeah. You know. I've heard of it before. I don't know if you guys have. Sorry, I was getting my charger for my phone because it's dying. I plan on having lots of drinks, enjoying some good geography, and filled fantasies, and then falling asleep happily satted with my thing in my hand. So, I just unplugged my computer. I don't need to open anyway. It's going to take me 2 hours to do this thing anyways. Okay. Wait, no, it was Tough Tooties from Victorious that I remember. Don't you ever say Tough Tooties to me. Falling asleep happily, sated with my almost got me. My member in my hand. Theodore! Hermione chastised him. So crude, he shrugged. Not us, he told her casually. You all got to enjoy the show last week, and will your smutty little socks with your antidotes. My turn to enjoy myself this week. If you think you're falling asleep in my flat with your member in your hand, you'll have to think again, mate. Draco was back in the room, his large presence looming in his living room doorway. I'd have to burn the bed sheets after you slept on them. Exactly how many bedrooms do you have in this flat, Draco? Pansy asked. He probably has a penthouse. That's probably what it was. Pansy asked him as she sat cross-legged on the living room floor, with her bag taking out the mirror for the erased effect. Because I'm all for sharing a bed, but I'm not comfortable with waking up to morning wood. She turned and glared at Theo, who was just about to suggest that he would be more than happy to bunk up with her. 3, Draco answered as he sauntered slowly into the room. Hermione dared herself not to look at him. You and Granger are more than welcome to share my king. I'll take the couch, and you others can fight amongst yourselves for the other 2 doubles. Why don't they transfigure a object? That's just me, because that's the first thing I thought about. Like, transfigure an object into a bed. I mean, you can turn live birds into water goblets. Why can't you turn a table into a frickin' bed? Just get the big coffee table, turn it into a bed because it has to be the same size, and then you have another bed. There you go. You know. So there's no fighting. Duh. Or the dining room table. There you go. There's another one. Shotgun! Theo shouted, hand up in the air. Blaze rolled his eyes. Can't call shotgun on a bed, mate. Not the rules. He turned to Draco. Can we transfigure 2 singles instead? There we go. That's what I thought. He watched Draco shrug. Nice one. Nice one. Don't fancy sharing with someone with a chest hairier than mine. So me and Granger are sharing, Pansy asked, looking up at Draco. Oh, to be a fly on that wall, Theo interjected wistfully. Draco nodded and took a sip of it. Oh, oh, oh my! He must be, like that image too. Don't get too excited, my dude. Up to you, but the offer is there. The couch might get me a stiff neck in the morning, but nothing beats a stiff member from waking up next to the sight of two lovely ladies snuggled in together. Theo winked at Draco, tipping his drink at him. You're missing out, mate. Imagine waking up to that view on your birthday. Draco fixed him with a dark and threatening look and gulped down his whiskey. Hermione's cheeks glowed pink, and Pansy shook her head in disgust. Theodore, not. The tone lower. Lower your tone, she berated, before ignoring him and picking up the mirror. Anyway, before we can celebrate Draco's impending birth age properly, we have the little matter of a potion to drink and a fantasy to watch. Son of a... There we go. Got it. The little matter of a potion to drink. Wait, what? Yeah, potion to drink and watch a fantasy to watch. All three men, yet to have their turn, swiftly looked away from her, taking large mouthfuls of the drink. Maybe let them have a few drinks first, Pansy, Hermione offered, seeing the discomfort on their faces, Draco's in particular. Let us all loosen up a bit before we go there. Pansy huffed, but gave in. Fine, we'll all get drunk, sing happy birthday to Draco, and then make him show you exactly what he preferably like to spend his special day doing. Pansy's lips twisted into a most ferocious smirk. Hermione heard a noise from Draco's direction. She couldn't help but look over. It was a small movement, but Hermione caught the end of it. Just as he was done biting down on his knuckles slightly, as if he was trying really hard not to let a noise escape from the back of his throat. He saw her looking and caught her eye. She panicked and biting her lip instead of losing eye contact. His eyes automatically darted to her lip. Never bite your lip in front of him. It drives him nuts. I mean, I bite my lip because I think, and I'm just biting my lip. I caught myself doing it. I still catch myself doing it. And people were like, oh, that's sexy. I'm like, how? I guess it shows that I'm thinking and there's stuff up here. So I guess a brain is sexy. I don't know. Hermione heard it. Yeah. She panicked. Yeah. Her tongue snuck out to lick her lip for a second, and he closed his eyes. She watched him take in a small, steady breath. Let's get our drunk on then, Blaise announced as Hermione's eyes reverted to him, pouring more drinks for everyone. Think I'm going to need to be absolutely shit-faced to deal with the next few hours. When Hermione looked back at Draco, he had his back to her talking about Quidditch with Harry. It would be a good few hours before he looked at her again. 3 hours later, Hermione was tipsy. Not the type where you start gushing and crying over everything like Pansy did, but the type that left you with a happy feeling and slightly more confidence than you usually would. Yeah, because when you're drunk, you think that you're on top of the world. If you guys haven't played at dead of night, there was this kid who thought she could float on the staircase. But because the kid Jimmy that she was growing up with gave her alcohol because she had her burning toy in her hands and she couldn't go to the infirmary because he wouldn't let her. So he kept on giving her medicine, which was whiskey bottles. So it makes you like really, you feel like lighter than air, you feel like on top of the world. That's what usually it's described as, and that's probably what she's feeling. Slightly more confident, see, than you usually would. It left her laughing at Theo's lewd jokes. I would laugh at lewd jokes anyway, more than she would, and allowing herself to casually glance at Malfoy's direction slightly more than she was used to. In my book, she didn't miss the small looks he got in return, though. When he thought she wasn't looking, she never usually noticed at all if he looked at her, as he was so subtle, which led her to believe that he was either drunk enough to not care that she could catch him, or he wanted her to know. He wanted her to feel his eyes pouring into her. He never looked her in the eye, though, no matter how much he tried to catch her. Right. We're nearing midnight, Pansy said, a businesslike voice from her place on the couch next to Harry as they shared drinks and talked together in quiet voices. Shall we get the show on the road? By the way, I'm still holding my end of the bargain. I'm skipping all the scenes with Blaze, and if you're a newcomer, I'll show you. Shall we get show on the road? Because otherwise I'll be falling asleep halfway through and something tells me we won't be getting an interval. How do we decide who goes next? Harry asked, looking rather anxious. Fuck it. I'll go. Blaze stood up and stretched himself, already having a skin full of alcohol, and therefore far more up for it than he was previously. You're going to see all of my dirty laundry being aired eventually. Anyways, might as well do it while I'm intoxicated. I mean, yeah, that's a way to do it. Hermione watched as there was a flurry of activity. Blaze pulled the pink vial from the pocket as Pansy brought his mirror out of her little bag. Harry and Theo gathered around Blaze as he sat himself on the chair in the middle of the room, just like Theo did, and Hermione found herself moving closer. She saw Draco move to the armchair just behind Blaze and sat down in it, completely filling the space. I'll sit this one out, mate, he told Blaze as he sipped his whiskey. Spare myself the agony of what everyone else is about to witness. She felt his gaze on her momentarily before he looked at his glass intently. He's probably looking at her through the glass. I've seen it done before, and it's a sneaky way to look at your crush, I guess. Here, Hermione. Pansy put the mirror into her hands, and she felt the cold glass vibrating between her fingers slightly. It's itching to be used. Wow. That scares me. Pansy pulled down the little footstool she had been using last week, right in front of Blaze's chair, and directly in Draco's eyeline, who sat behind him. Her throat went dry slightly at the fact that Malfoy was going to be able to see her. She see her expression, her blushes, her intakes of breath. Oh gosh, even he can see her thighs clenching together if she became really aroused. I'd die. I'm like, about to die, bitch. Then again, I wouldn't be the one to take I wouldn't own a store like this, and even if I did, I wouldn't be the one testing the product. I would be like, hey, you can test the product. I'll write down the data and then put it together because I ain't watching this shit. You can't pay me enough to do it. And I pay myself. You're all welcome, by the way. Before we start, Blaze announced holding the vial to his lips. Oh, sorry. Blaze announced, holding the vial to his lips. You might all actually learn something. And then his lips were around the vial, and he was knocking the liquid back into his mouth. Pansy instructed Hermione to do what she had done with Theo, but take Blaze's finger and then press together with her own down upon the mirror. She felt the mirror warm and start to buzz a little more. Its magic starting to work as the blacks of Blaze's eyes went pink. The flash appeared, making them all wince before the mirror tuned into something straight away. What looked like a hotel room? Why isn't it bouncing around like mine did? Theo whispered curiously, as the vision of Blaze and a current unidentified woman came closer into focus. Because Blaze knows what he wants, came Draco's voice deep down from opposite of her. Hermione couldn't help but look up at him. He was looking straight at her, his expression unwavering. He was going to watch her. Oh, shit. Hermione heard Harry breathe in from just her left above her. Is that Ginny? Hermione's eyes widened when the girl came into focus properly, and then the fantasy image on screen sprung to life properly, sucking them all in as they if compelled to watch without tearing their eyes away. Sorry, I'm actually literally skipping forward. Shit, just the image of Blaze between Ginny's legs like that had her face flushing and her breathing going deeper. She was well aware that her pupils were probably dilated. She knew that Draco could see everything. She could feel his eyes staring at her intently, never moving, away from her face to her body as she sat there watching two people F each other. Yeah. Look at me. His voice rumbled through her, and she leaned up. Wait, what? Okay, so that is different. Okay, sorry. Keep on going. Hermione, you like that, didn't you? Hermione jumped slightly when Draco's voice appeared in her mind, as clear as a bell. She looked around, expecting to find him back over her shoulder, but no. He was still sat languidly in his chair, still looking at her. He was using Animo Sermo, a telepathic spell commonly used between Aurors who needed to speak to each other without being noticed during raids and arrests. Hermione didn't dare use it herself, though. She didn't know how to control it properly, so it only stayed on the telepathies of one person. You liked the flush of her body when she convulsed and she finished. You liked the little noises she made and the way Blaze knelt between her legs, didn't you? Hermione couldn't look up. She was breathing too heavily, and she knew her eyes would give it away. Nod for yes, Hermione. Nod yes, Granger. Yeah, nod for yes. He practically growled, and she felt the hairs stand up on the back of her neck. Feeling brave, probably still from the alcohol, she nodded slowly. So slowly that it was barely visible, but she knew he had seen it. Good. Keep watching. Don't look at me. His voice was low. Blaze certainly wait, what? Yeah, I can just go from there because the other stuff really didn't care. Blaze certainly liked to dabble with dominance. He liked to be in control of a situation. I mean, I like to, too. Like, I like to be in control of a situation, but in the bedroom? Me ordering my husband around makes him look like a pussy, to be honest with you. He looked to be in control of a situation. Hermione couldn't help but feel hot under the collar as she watched them both completely indulged. Little touches, like I said, Granger. She heard his voice again, but didn't look up, keeping her eyes on the mirror. The little touches turn into the bigger, bruising ones. They take the subtle moans and turn them into the screams that leave your voice box sore. He inhaled, and it sent a shiver down her spine at the sound. And if you're partial, sometimes a hand on your throat can cause the sensation to make you finish even harder. Hermione felt the heat pool between her legs at his words. If he didn't watch it, okay, then I don't need to see that sentence. Do you see the power in his frame, Granger? The way he tells her what he's going to do to her? The way she submits to him, gives him what he wants. Draco's gravelly voice came into her senses again, as his own breathing sounding as low as her own. Hermione nodded again. How does he know what's going on? It's a mirror. It's not showing on the other side, so how can he see it? Because he's standing right behind Blaze. I don't understand that. Hermione nodded again, slow and subtle. You like the idea of that, don't you? Submitting when you're naturally someone who has to be in control. Well, damn. Can I see it on your face? I can see it on your face. Hermione closed her eyes for a second. Keep them open, Granger. I want to watch your experience of your expression and the blacks of your eyes when he F's her. I want to watch your thighs clench because you need to relieve the pressure between your legs. I want to watch you bite your bottom lip between your teeth as you imagine it's you who's being effed to within an inch of your life. She drew a breath and had to clench her thighs. The image he provoked had her thinking of the only person who she fantasized between her legs for the past 2 years. There was only him who had scratched the itch for her. She was suddenly feeling so desperate. Do you think of... What? Who do you think of, Granger? He had a husky tone, obviously affected by watching her, being turned on by the power of his words. Who gets you off when you're right on the edge? Who do you finish for? She almost looked up at him, but shook her head slightly. She heard him chuckle darkly. I think I know. Say it, okay. I'm not going to say what he's just said. Okay. When is this over? Oh. Her body clenched under him, but she needed... Oh, gosh. You like that. He calls her a good girl, don't you? Hermione's eyes went wide. She didn't know where to put her face as embarrassment flushed her features. I can see your eyes change every time he says it. His voice was like a purr. Have you ever been called a good girl while your head's thrown back with a man's head between your legs, and you've finally been given permission to finish, Granger? Hermione's breath was labored at the thought of Ginny's finishing being delayed. The idea of someone having that type of control, making that decision. You can edge a woman for hours and leave her right on the cusp of finishing. Granger. She felt her heartbeat speed up and glanced at him for the top of her eye line. Still sitting casually drinking his whiskey, seemingly unaffected from what she could tell. But his words and his tone told her differently. You can just hang there and feeling nothing but teeth and tongue, fingers and lips, but won't need to feel a member until the very last second when your walls start to quake. Jeez, crow, who talks like this? I have never met a guy who talks like this. Then again, I am 19, almost 19. I'm not 19 yet. I'm rounding, how about that? How about that? Catch me outside, how about that? But I have never heard, when I talk to my mom about this, my mom goes, I have never heard of a person that talks like that. So, she's like me. She doesn't know. Hermione felt a shot of electricity buried deep inside of her core, and she sucked in a breath that no one else would have been able to see. But his eyes were tailored to her body, and she heard him inside of her head, taking a deep breath himself. I know you can feel that between your legs. I know you're wondering why. What I am saying, why I'm saying, and the way that I am saying it is affecting you so much. She pursed her lips at his words. You like to be seduced by words. You like how words make you feel. Okay. You like how words make you feel. Sorry, like, it was, like, cutting in. It was saying she. Also, I'll be right back. Hold on. Sorry, I'm back now. I had to run out and tell the mower boys to take care of a tree limb that was kind of falling down. And I forgot that they looked my age, so... And also I'm wearing really tight jeans, and I'm like, I'm embarrassed. Great. That's great. All boys, no girl. I ran, so, yeah. Well, jogged. I don't run. The right ones can turn you on. She let out a low breath and went back to the mirror. She was on her knees. Wait, what the fuck? I don't even know this shit. Wait, when did Jenny have curls? The fuck? When did Jenny have curls? Am I losing my fucking mind? Because she had straight hair. Okay. Anyways, let's keep going. Okay. Her face was flushed and she was panting. Wait, what? Was I not far enough yet? Did you hear the things he said to her, Hermione? She gulped and tried to ignore the aching between her legs. The things he had her imagining. People love the power of words, almost as powerful as the devil's tangle itself. She liked what he said to her because it was dark and depraved and intoxicating. He knows she wants it, even if she can't admit it out loud. Hermione heard his breathing in her ears, and felt like she was losing it herself. Deep down, everyone wants it dirty. They want the talk and the naughty little things in between the effing, even you, Granger. He gritted his teeth, trying to hold back his release, but her moans weren't helping. Wait, what? They had turned into one long, keening sound of pleasure. She was almost there. He could feel trembles coursing through her, but he couldn't wait. He'd waited long enough, too long. I said that part because, hey, the next part's just Granger and whatever. Look at me, Granger. She saw the outline of him in her vision as her eyes started to look up. The visions in the mirror had her head spinning. Yeah, my heart's not. It's still racing from the run. Okay. Her vision, as her eyes started to look up, the visions in the mirror had her head spinning along with the words he kept purring into her ear. Granger, do it. His voice was raspy and deep. "Look at me now," he was demanding, clear in his instruction, and he wasn't taking her shyness as an answer. She saw him, her vision swimming as the ache between her legs almost exploded, and her pupils were blown wide with the need for something, for him and his words. He was sat there, casually leaning back in his armchair, but then she saw his eyes. She screamed, her body bucking. Wait, what? Then she saw her eyes. We don't need to do this Ginny stuff. Draco Malfoy's eyes were blown wide, and his chest was heaving. His face held a stony expression as his eyes bore into hers, and with so much intensity that it made her core twinge with so much unspoken need and sexual tension. Shit. I'm gonna leave one in there just in case, but yeah. Fuck, Granger, you're beautiful when you're on the edge. He bit his lip as he said it in her mind, and his eyes raked down her body momentarily, settling along her thighs. I was looking at your thighs to decide whether or he was looking at your thighs to decide whether or not he can fit in between them, Pansy repeated with a smirk. He wants to make sure you'll be able to take him, all of him. Hermione let her eyes wander, never having done so before, but feeling compelled to. As they lowered down and met his groin region, she felt her thighs tense up again. Fuck, he was going to fucking kill her. Yes, he is! Honey, how'd you know? Okay. Grown-up sleepovers are underrated. Blaise Zabini was a smug little bastard. Sitting there, a wicked grin on his face, and a tiny crowd of silent people around him. Naturally, he knew he would... He would make them all quite literally weak at the knees with his kinky desires, but he had no idea that his darker ones ran that deep, and now they all knew about her. Now it was out in the open. He hesitated to glance over at Potter, Ginny's old flame. Luckily, he hadn't combusted. Well, she never did that with me, Harry mused as he took his glasses off and wiped them clean. She certainly never put those types of noise. Never made those types of noises, he pondered. Really selling yourself there, Potter? Theo tapped him on the back sympathetically, offering him a whiskey glass. Sorry, but I have to address the elephant in the room. Though he shot a look at Draco, who was still sat in the chair, and pointed towards his crotch. Not yours. Sorry, mate. The other elephant. Draco shot him a look of death, and it gave Theo two fingers. If you're wondering what that is, it's French and English problem. And then stood from his seat with a shake of his head, and Hermione watched as he paced out of the living room. But Ginny Weasley, though, Theo? Asked Blaise, completely ignoring Draco's dramatics. Where the fuck did that smut rocket come from? Since when, you horny little deviant? Blaise, I'm proud of you. Blaise shrugged. Always thought she was fit, even in school. Sorry, Potter. Harry put his hand up in an acceptance. Always thought she'd be the type to get ready and rearing with a little coaxing. Anyway, Why don't you ask her out? Theo asked. You see her most days in the ministry, those pencil skirts and those calves, he finished with a sigh. Why don't you ask Luna out if she fancies another ride on your broomstick? Blaze asked defensively. Theo choked on his fire whiskey. We're not talking about me. Please continue. He deflected. Blaze looked uncomfortably at Harry. There's just never been a right time to ask, to be honest. He put his head down and filled with his glass. If you mean me, then don't even consider it. Harry cut in. I've never thought about Ginny in that way for years. He glanced over at Pansy for a moment before his eyes flicked back to Blaze. You want her? Go and get her. Blaze smirked and looked at him. Could say the same for you too, mate, as he nodded in Pansy's direction. Harry shook his head in warning. Hermione had always thought Harry's little crush on Pansy was cute. He was a jabbering wreck around her most of the time, and he was loitered in the background, just waiting to be seen. Naturally, Hermione wasn't allowed to tell Pansy any of this, with Hermione making Harry making her keep tight-lipped for fear of ruining his friendship with her. It was complicated, subtle, and oh so very cute, unlike her own situation with Draco, which was the complete bloody opposite at the moment. Hermione noticed Harry slip away from the door and make his way into the kitchen, probably to stop Malfoy from taking a butter knife to Theo's genital area. It was odd how Harry was usually the one who could bring him round and calm him down with these words. The friendship that the boys had with each other was a far cry from Hogwarts. They had been inseparable for a few years now, and Hermione knew that Harry probably knew a lot more about Malfoy than he ever let on. I need to ask you a few questions, Blaze, just like I did with Theo last week, Pansy asked the man as she came to sit on the stool that Hermione had occupied in front of him. Pansy took out her official-looking notebook and quill as she sat down to start grilling him. She really was very thorough. It was about the aftercare for Pansy, making sure the drinker of the potion felt okay, if they felt any side effects, and how they felt during their fantasy. She wanted every little detail to make sure that she got the statistics right. Right. I'm turning in, Theo announced with a yawn. Hermione saw Harry and Draco walk back through the living room door. Harry nodded over in her direction. Hermione frowned to herself, but tried to put it to the back of her mind. So I'll see all you tossers bright and early in the morning for his lordship's birthday. Oh, and I'm not changing my bed from a double to a single. So if you get cold in the night, Pans, you know where to find me. I'd rather sleep with Filch, sorry. I can misread sometimes. Pansy retorted in the deadpan tone, writing down notes in her book, not even bothering to look up. I hear you. He likes it rough, Pans. Theo threw back, smirking at her. And Mrs. Norris likes to watch. Sometimes I wonder why we haven't checked you into St. Mongoose. Harry contemplated, wrinkling his nose. Everyone else shook their heads. Cheerily, Theo made his way over to the living room door and bowed to his audience. Farewell, peasants, he announced as he backed out of the door. Sweet dreams and all that bollocks. His inability to give a fuck really scares me sometimes, Blaze said from his seat, yawning and stretching himself. I'm ready to travel to Bedfordshire myself, too, though. To be fair, it's been an eventful evening. Everyone agreed that agreed that as it was almost 2 in the morning, that it might be best to turn in for the night. Hermione shot a cautious glance at Draco, but he wasn't looking at her as he went about fixing his makeshift bed on the couch. How is he going to fit on there? Sorry, I had a yawn. His body parts would be hanging off the edge. He hadn't looked at her since he was inside of her head earlier. She now didn't know whether it was because she was taking a step back or because he was attempting to control himself and he knew she'd seen it. He knew her eyes had slid down and spotted his package. Heat rose to her face as she flashed back to it again. The bulge in his trousers. Could it be hidden when he sat at that angle? He usually sat with one leg crossed over the other, but when he sat casually, Zeus may the Lord have mercy upon her soul. She hadn't even seen it properly, but she knew it would snap her in half. She had momentarily prayed that it had already been... Hold on. Okay. Had already been what? Hadn't been seen properly. Yeah. She had momentarily prayed that it had already been at full mast, and that was why it looked so big. But she knew she was wrong. She knew she'd be screaming if he ever put his member inside of her. She had no doubt. Bringing herself out of her thoughts, she made her way to Harry, who was pouring himself a glass of water in the kitchen. "What were you saying to Malfoy?" she asked him in a low voice, not wanting anyone to hear their conversation. "I saw you gesture in my direction." Harry smiled to himself. "Oh, nothing," he said innocently. "But boys can talk too, you know." He then looked at her knowingly, eyebrows raised suggestively. "Oh, him and Pansy were just bloody made for each other. Meddling little bastards." "Granger," came Pansy's voice from near the kitchen door, bringing her out of her thoughts. "Come on, bedtime." Hermione saw Harry's pupils dilate as he looked over at Pansy. She was wearing an oversized t-shirt that showed off her long legs exceptionally well. Yet again, she had a wicked grin on her face, and Hermione just knew she was planning something. "I could have sworn I packed them." Hermione's eyes furrowed as she looked through her bag again on the bed. Draco's bed, to be more precise. His room didn't give off a Death Eatery vibe at all. Quite the opposite, actually. All neutral tones and a pale mint smattering of color throughout the room. And the bed, wow. He was a big man, and the big man needed a big bed. His was huge, four-poster, white and mint drapes around it. And it was so large, both in length and width, that she wondered whether it was actually bigger than a king size. It had to be. "You didn't pack your pajamas?" Pansy asked her coyly as she brushed her hair. "Oh, what a shame." Hermione snapped her bag shut. "What did you do with them?" Her hands went to her hips, and she tapped her foot impatiently. "Pansy, give them. I got rid of them," she told her as she watched her through the floor-length mirror in the room. "You won't be needing them. I have other ideas." Hermione growled at her. "Pansy," she said in a low, threatening voice. Pansy smiled innocently. "Draco, dear," she shouted loudly. Hermione suddenly felt sick. What they heard, his distant voice from another room. "Granger's forgotten her pajamas." "No," Hermione told her furiously. "Shh," Pansy told her impatiently. "Can she borrow a shirt of yours to use?" Hermione wanted the floor to swallow her up. Pansy was dead. She was deader than dead. She was off her friends list. Meddling little cow. There was a silent pause as they waited for Draco's reply, which seemed to be taking its time. Hermione put her head in her hands and sat down on the bed, feeling so embarrassed and uncomfortable. I have a question. I heard that some people, they sleep in bras, but some bras are so uncomfortable. And also I heard that it doesn't help with sagging. So why do people sleep in bras? I mean, they choose to. It's not like you come home after work so tired you don't take it off. I mean, people choose to wear it. What is that? I wonder. Anyways. There's some shirts in the wardrobe in the right-hand side of the room, came his voice from a distant, finely sounding gruff and a little raspy. Pansy raised her eyebrows. "Oh, Granger," she said excitedly. "He's going to blow his load when he sees you." Hermione huffed. "Pansy, we're going to bed. He's not going to see me wearing his shirt." Pansy was already at the wardrobe as she spoke, picking out a crisp white shirt and throwing it on in Hermione's direction. "Just put it on. Let's get into bed. We have things to discuss." Her smile was wicked as she leapt onto the left-hand side of the bed and turned the covers down and wiggling around to get comfy. "Oh my gosh, he sleeps like a prince," Hermione snorted as she buttoned up the shirt, leaving her navy blue bra and knickers on underneath. Why is she wearing her bra to bed? Only the top two buttons opened and rolled the sleeves up to her elbows. "It bloody well figures." She pulled her hair out of her bobble until her curls were swaying down past her shoulders and down her back, and then climbed into the right-hand side of the bed, and the bed felt like it was made of clouds. Certainly no expense spared for Draco. Pansy started moving up and down on her back on her side of the bed, using her feet to thrust up on the bed in a fast motion. I'll give you a chance, 5 seconds, to guess what she's doing. You got it? Okay, here we go. That was probably not 5 seconds, but then again, hey. "What the bloody hell are you doing?" Pansy asked, debating whether it was actually Pansy who needed the trip to St. Mongoose instead. Testing the structure, she told Hermione casually. You can't make as much as noise as you want in this bed. That headboard won't be giving away your sordid details. She giggled, and Hermione shook her head. I'm being serious. He could throw you around around this thing like a rag doll, and you wouldn't hear so much as a creak. Hermione moaned and put her head back into the pillow. She didn't need the mental imagery of Draco Malfoy throwing her around his bed with his strong, thick arms, then pinning her down with his, oh my gosh, his pillow smelled like him. She was surrounded by his intoxicating scent, his aftershave, a hint of tea tree, and spearmint shower gel. Fuck. I saw you both before, Pansy mused as she stopped her assault on the mattress and turned on her side to face Hermione. What was going on there? He looked like he was about to implode. And you, she tittered to herself, you looked like you were sitting there creaming your knickers. Pansy, you never cease to utterly disgust me at times. Hermione tutted. But now you mention it, he used the aura charm on me to speak to me, so no one else could hear. He was talking to me, Pansy. Pansy sat up bolt straight. She bolted up straight and made a small fist pump in the air. Oh, this is too good! She then turned onto her stomach on the bed, crossing her legs as she cocked up on her back, and put her chin in her hands. Looking at Hermione attentively. You have my full and undivided attention. Please continue. Hermione rolled her eyes, but couldn't help the small smile on her face. It felt more intense than last week. He just knew what to say to make my pulse going. I told you, Pansy said matter-of-factly. Draco does a dirty talk so well, but he weren't moaning incoherently in front of everyone. So I can only assume he was keeping it PG, because when he really talks, you won't be able to stop the moans from coming out of your mouth. Hermione closed her eyes and bit her lip. This evening was bad enough. She wasn't quite sure what she would do if he got any worse. She'd be begging him to F her in seconds if that was the case. He's not going to part your thighs and F you either. It's not his style. Pansy told her, wickedly, like she was reading her mind. Foreplay is important to him. Once he's got you where he wants you, it could be weeks before he even gives in and attempts to try himself inside of you. He's a glutton for punishment. Hermione held her breath. Remember, he's only got one shot to not fuck this up for him. He won't want to make a wrong move. How could he possibly fuck it up? Hermione asked, sounding perplexed. He must know I want him to. He doesn't want to hurt you, Granger. Pansy whispered to her. Hermione watched with curiosity as one of Pansy's hands reached out and undid another two of the shirt buttons, now exposing the tops of her breast and her blue bra. If he hurts you while he's trying to stretch you It's game over for him, she continued. He won't keep going. He refuses to hurt a lady like that. Hermione sighed, half resigned herself to the thought of never actually being able to shag Draco Malfoy properly. The most she could hope for would be a bit of foreplay and the tip of his thing spreading her lips at her entrance. What the fuck did I just read? Oh my gosh. Okay. One thing she didn't want to tell Pansy was that he had called her beautiful. It might have been a slip of the tongue, as they were both so pent up, but it meant enough to Hermione that she wanted to keep it to herself. Draco Malfoy had called her beautiful. Her thought was physically attractive. That was something. She needed to keep that for herself. Ugh, Pansy fake moaned as she started to toss and turn suddenly on the bed. Would you look at that? I'm suddenly really uncomfortable. Hermione frowned. This mattress is going to do my back no favors. She raised her eyebrow at Hermione. Before throwing the covers off of herself and standing out of the bed, and gave a wink. I think I'll have to go sleep on the couch. Utterly bewildered, Hermione watched her friend walk to the bedroom door in her oversized t-shirt. But Malfoy's on the couch. When Pansy threw her a look that would match the devil's, Hermione knew exactly what the witch was up to. Before she could protest, Hermione watched Pansy pad out of the room and heard a small commotion in the living room. Draco's tone was low and threatening. Pansy's was persistent and held a defense undertone. Hermione got out of bed, intent of telling them both that she could take the couch instead, when she heard large footsteps padding towards the room. She froze on the spot. It took a second for her to realign her senses as a large presence walked through the bedroom door. The black buttons were a stark contrast to the neutral hue of the chest area. That was when Hermione realized that Draco Malfoy was standing at his bedroom door wearing nothing but a pair of black jogger bottoms and standing on the threshold as if waiting to be given silent permission to enter his own room. They just stood there, looking at each other, taking each other in, Hermione holding her breath as she viewed the expanse of his large chest and shoulders and smattering of the blonde hair in the middle of his pecs, and happy trail that dipped, showing off his Adonis belt. The man was a mountain, and she calmed herself enough to stop herself from reaching for him in order to climb him. Nice shirt, he told her with a growl, his eyes focused intently on her bare thighs. The look heated her to the core. Pansy took my couch, Draco said again in an intoxicating, quiet voice, as she felt his eyes rake over her frame. And my quilt. He was fully taking in the look of her in the shirt and of his that she was wearing. And my pillow. And his eyes darkened in the almost primal manner. Then they came to rest on the undid buttons on the top of the shirt, the peak of her breasts just visible, pushing against her navy blue bra. Bloody Pansy, Hermione put her head down and put a stray strand of her hair behind her ear. She stuttered, feeling a little embarrassed and anxious about the current situation that was about to unfold. Do you want me to find somewhere else? Let you sleep in your own bed? She looked up to see Draco shaking his head, taking a step into the room. No, he told her confidently. You can stay. He kept his eyes on her as he moved around and went towards the side of the bed that Pansy had been sleeping on. It's big enough for two. We'll barely touch each other. Hermione gulped. I had to gulp too because I had too much spit in my mouth, and licked her lips as she glanced at the retracting back and toned muscles, rippling dangerously as he walked. As he sat down on the bed and he reclined onto the pillow, and then turned onto his side, facing away from where he would be lying. He really did take up a lot of space. If he accidentally rolled over and touched her in the night, he won't touch you without your permission. Oh, this was going to be a long fucking night. Hermione couldn't sleep. She had lay on the same position for close to an hour, telling herself not to fidget or make a sudden move. She didn't want him thinking that she was uncomfortable or anxious in his presence. In any way, Gosh knew she was. She was about to rip her own skin off. She was that hot with anticipation. She didn't need him to know. I'm gonna skip ahead, 'cause it's talking about her. She gave in practically on the hour, turning so slowly as quietly as she could in the bed, hoping he wouldn't feel her and think she was trying to attract attention. As she finally got into a comfortable position on her other side, she opened her eyes. The expanse of his back was a road map of muscles, all intertwining together and tightening as he breathed in and out peacefully. His alabaster skin only set off the defined line down the middle of his back, making her mouth water, and her hand begged to reach out and touch. I'm going to skip ahead again. She's fantasizing, and lost in her sorted thoughts, Hermione swallowed and flexed out her hand involuntarily, her fingertips to brush against Draco's shoulder. The smallest of motions, barely there, but it was all it took for the heat to pool between her legs. This paled as she heard Malfoy take a sharp intake of breath. You should be sleeping. His voice, deep, vibrated out of his chest. She felt herself pale. Shit. What did she do now? She'd been caught. She felt like some sort of naughty schoolgirl found out that she was out past curfew. Ouch. Sorry. Sorry, she said in a small voice, retracting her hand and pulling it against her chest, as if she had been burned. She could feel her cheeks flaming. She was suddenly terribly thankful, for the room was dark apart from the moonlight that peeked at them through the curtains right every now and again. My hand was too close. He breathed, his eyes still closed and his head still turned to the side. because he turned on his back, pretty much. That's the position he's in right now. Do us both a favor and turn around and go to sleep. Granger. His voice was throaty and there was a husk to it. His tone. Neither of us have slept yet tonight, because we can feel each other's presence. Hermione's breathing quickened. And you don't want to feel any more of me than you have to. That did nothing to help Hermione's imagination, and yet was she supposed to take this as rejection? Or was he doing this as part of his game that he supposedly played? And was he warning her away because he didn't want her? Or was he warning her away because he didn't want himself to want her? Was it his way of controlling himself? He felt like being defiant and refusing to move. After all, he was the one who moved into her space, brought their bodies closer. He was the one who was also awake like her. Must have felt her move in the same place. But then it was his bed. So I stood to reason that it was his rules, wasn't it? That was all just one big awkward mess. Quietly, Hermione shuffled back slightly to give him more room, but instead of lying back on her side, she lay on her back and clutched the covers to her chest, feeling her curls spilling over the side of the pillow and down the tip of a tendril accidentally landing on the place between Harry's shoulder and neck. She heard him suck in another breath, and then felt his arm bend and slowly as he picked up her curl out between her fingers, as if to shed the curl off of him. But instead he glanced and saw his head. She glanced and saw his head turn, his eyes open, looking at the curl in his fingers. You have thick hair, Draco said in a quiet voice after a minute or two. Hermione swallowed hard when she saw his bicep flex slightly as she watched him playing with the hair between his fingers. Easy to grab. The heat pooling between her thighs was slowly turning into an inferno. His subliminal messages were driving her to the point of insanity. Easy to grab, the image of him grabbing the back of her hair and forcing her forehead roughly against his as he effed her mercilessly entered her thoughts, and before she stopped herself, she let out the smallest of sounds, the smallest decibel of a moan. Draco's eyes snapped to her face. His eyes searched for something, a reaction. He wanted to know whether she was getting pleasure from this, any sign at all, to know if it was affecting her. She looked at him through hooded eyes, and she saw the tiniest hint of a smirk edging its way onto his lips. It doesn't take much once the thought is there, does it? He growled. The imagination takes over, and then your senses follow. Harry could feel him shift slowly next to her, his body turning towards her, after his onto his side. She felt her pillow dip under the pressure of his forearm as he held himself above her, as he was looking down on her. The end of the end of her lock of hair still between his fingers as he held it against the pillow, just above her head. She chanced to glance his torso, making her mouth salviate. I can't say that word. Salvate. There we go. And his black jogging bottoms clinging to his very bottom of his hips. This man was dangerously tantalizing, and Hermione could not help but feel the pull that he had on her. He could consume her within his heat in a heartbeat. I've always wondered what it would feel like, Draco said, was looking at her hair, making her feel the anticipation of what he would do or say next. If it would be soft or whether my fingers would get tangled. His eyes found hers and they burned her. But I've never been allowed to touch, have I? Hermione knew he wasn't talking about her hair anymore, and now she felt like her whole body was burning. His eyes searched for hers after he studied her face. He seemed to have found a sign of what he was looking for, because his eyes burned brighter as he said, "Closer. Close your eyes, Granger," he whispered. "I need you to listen to me. Just my voice." Hermione felt her nerve endings catching fire at his words. Just his voice. Sorry. His voice set fire to her insides. She let out a small, shaky breath before doing as he asked, showing her eyes slowly, and then all of her other senses came into play. When I asked you a question, Granger, just nod for yes and shake your head for no. Do you understand? His voice was raspy, his breath tickling her neck, ear, and cheek. You don't need to speak unless I ask you to. Slowly she nodded, feeling the bedsheets move against her torso as she did. Good. His gravelly voice assaulted her senses, her hairs standing up on the back of her arms. By the way, this is a warning because it gets kind of graphic, but not too graphic. It's nothing like what's going to happen in chapter 5, 6, and 7. Kind of flows together, I guess. I know Pansy talks to you, tells you things. Hermione went to speak, defending herself and Pansy in case he thought they were gossiping about him, but he hushed her before she got the chance. I told you not to talk, he told her seriously. Just listen, Granger. She bit her lip, and she heard him suck in a breath of his own. Don't do that, he told her, or this won't end well for either of us. She let her lip free and squeezed her thighs together beneath the quilt. The man hadn't touched her and had barely spoken to her. He already had her practically gasping for air. It was like sweet torture, being a player within a game that only he can win. Pansy knows me very well, but she doesn't know everything, he whispered, and Hermione pursed her lips together. I still have secrets. I have lots of secrets, Granger. He told her, close to her ear. Do you want to know one of them? She couldn't help herself. She had to know the rough sound of his voice was pulling her under, and she nodded slowly, hearing him give off a very quiet but dark chuckle. Granger, I want you to imagine a classroom at Hogwarts, he began, his low voice. Hermione could sense that his fingers were still playing with her strands of hair. It could be any classroom, as long as it has a desk at the front. Think of one for me. Hermione saw Professor Slughorn's potions classroom. The dark and dingy benches look unusually clearer than normal, but the teacher's large wooden desk was right there at the front of the room. Now I want you to imagine yourself sitting at... Yeah. He pretty much gives her a scenario. Okay. Here we go. Hermione, Professor is still at the desk, not even bothering to look up at you. The other students were still working. They're not interested in you either. But there's one boy left his stool now, and he's walking up behind you because he sees you. Hermione could picture it in her head. Picture the boy, his intoxicating eyes. That's right. He's right behind you. And you can feel his body heating. No one would ever bother to look up if he touched you, Granger. She shuddered when she felt his lips suddenly next to her ear. What color are his eyes, Granger? She shuddered. Are they green? Are they gray? Sorry, not green. I can read. She bit her lip and he made a noise that had her chest rising and falling to keep her self-control. Slowly she nodded once, making him suck in air as she felt him shift slightly next to her. Granger, he asked, his voice barely audible. Do you want him to touch you? Yes. She wanted his hands all over her, touching her and caressing her in places that would make her scream. She wanted everything. She wanted him to be the one to give it to her. She needed it badly. These games are breaking her slowly. When she finally nodded, she spoke sternly. I need you to tell me this time, Granger, verbally. Do you want to be touched? She pursed her lips. Yeah. Her voice didn't come out in a needy breath. When she spoke, yes, and she couldn't help but buck her hips slightly when she felt the ghost of the touch on her sternum, feeling her body flush at the slight contract. He was touching her. He had asked to touch her. He's still behind you at the potion professor's desk, but he makes no move to make you turn around. Yeah. He's touched you on the hips, the thighs. Sorry, I've talked to people and they're like, it's very uncomfortable. So I can summarize for it. Would you like your legs spread wide with him stood behind them? Between them, sorry. Why did I say behind? Between them? Hermione bit her lip, flushed with anticipation. As to where he was going with this, and turned on by the fact that he was losing his control. She nodded, and he chuckled. "Tell me." "Yes," she squeaked. "Keep biting that lip, and I'll bite it for you." He suddenly told her seriously and took his hand away. She almost moaned in dismay. "Stop it, Granger." She did as she was told, just needing to feel his feather-like touch upon her skin again. He stood looking at her from behind her parted thighs. He's asking about details, like, do you want him to do this, this, this? Can he grab your hair? He always wanted to do that. He wanted to always grab your hair. This moment could break at any time, and she needed this. She needed the magic of this moment. It was setting her soul on fire. He hadn't even touched her properly. You can see nothing but his eyes, and they're blown wide with the idea of being able to touch you. To see you open like that. Granger, he'd give anything to get on his knees and make you scream for him. He was losing his grip on his emotions. Hermione could tell. His fingers on her thigh were shifting over ever closer to the center until they came to the seam of her knickers. Anyways, he's teasing her, blah, 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 blah. Talking about what he's going to do to her on the desk, which we all have the information of doing that. Sorry, I'm looking ahead. Paul's, I told you not to bite your lip, Granger. It makes me want to. She felt his lips flutter against the pulse point on her neck, and she moaned weakly. You have no idea what it does. His voice was rough and passionate. Please, she groaned, low again, hips bucking against their fingers furiously. That's it. Do it, Granger. Finish for me. His voice suddenly sounded feral. He's always wanted to watch the look on your face when you fall over the edge. His fingers were moving so quickly against hers, now that she could feel herself reaching. She was close. Yeah. She was begging. She says, please. Please, Draco. Oh, well. He's like, who are you talking about? Who were you thinking of? Who's doing this to you? She felt him smile against her ear. Who's between your spread legs? She choked on a moan when she felt his chin graze her neck, his nose nuzzling in slightly, and his lips so close to her sensitive skin. Draco Malfoy, she breathed out, and the noise that escaped him was primal. His fingers regained a torturous pace that had Hermione bucking her hips furiously, and she started to feel the telltale sign of her impending finish. They then come for shit. Then finish for me. Hermione, he said against her neck. I want you to ride in my fingers. Who says this? And think of that boy in the classroom, the one that was always looking even when you were not paying attention. No attention to him. Harry felt something snap inside of her at his words. She felt an explosion between her legs, and her body spasmed. He wanted to make you finish for so long, Hermione. And then when she felt his breath against her sensitive flesh, his teeth nip at her neck, and she was fucking gone. Oh, Draco, oh gosh. She groaned and bit her lip as her body started to convulse as she rode the finishing to that their hands had brought her. Yeah, he used her hands to get off. Well, technically, his hands were on top of hers, but whatever. Technicalities, I guess. You really are quite quiet when you, finish. Good girl, he breathed in her ear, whose pimples erupted all over her body as his words. She felt him shift his body away from hers slightly, moving his hand up to settle on her stomach, as his other hand unwound from her hair and pulled the quilt back up around her. I told you that Pansy doesn't know all of my secrets. After a good few minutes of heavy breathing, Hermione began to come down from her orgasmic high. After a few minutes more, she finally opened her eyes and looked over at him, only to see that his were already closed, and his breathing seemed to be evening out. By the second, his hand was still lay on her stomach. His head was nestled near